Clint Eastwood canceled the entire town council meeting and rushed to a family being evicted. When he learned why the bank was taking their home, his response shocked everyone. It was April 15, 1987, in Carmel by the Sea, California. Clint Eastwood had been mayor for exactly 11 months, an unlikely political turn that had stunned Hollywood and amused the small coastal town of 4,000 residents. He'd run on a platform of common-sense governance and reducing bureaucratic nonsense. Most people thought it was a publicity stunt. It wasn't. That Wednesday morning, Clint was scheduled to chair a town council meeting about parking regulations and beach access permits, the kind of small-town minutia that filled most mayoral calendars. The council members were already seated. Local residents filled the gallery. Clint was reviewing his notes when his assistant, Maria Santos, rushed into the chamber. "Mr. Mayor," she whispered urgently, "there's a situation on Torres Street. The Mitchell family. Sheriff's there for an eviction." Clint looked up. "Can't the sheriff handle it?" "The family has 3 small children," Maria said quietly. "They're putting their belongings on the street right now. The father is a veteran. I thought you'd want to know." Clint was quiet for a moment, then stood up abruptly. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced to the room, "we're postponing this meeting. Something more important just came up." The council members exchanged confused looks. Residents murmured, "Postponing a scheduled town meeting for an eviction? That wasn't protocol. That wasn't how things were done." "Mr. Mayor," one council member objected, "we have a full agenda. This isn't—" "It's exactly what we're doing," Clint interrupted, already walking toward the exit. "Maria, get me the address. And someone call the sheriff. Tell him the mayor's on his way." What nobody in that council chamber understood yet was that Clint Eastwood hadn't become mayor to argue about parking spaces. He'd become mayor because he'd grown tired of watching bureaucracy crush ordinary people while officials hid behind procedures and regulations. The Mitchell family lived in a small cottage on Torres Street, 3 blocks from the beach, in one of Carmel's less affluent neighborhoods. Thomas Mitchell was 52 years old, a Navy veteran who'd served in Vietnam. His wife, Elena, was 48 and had been battling lupus for 3 years. Their 3 children, Sarah, 12, Marcus, 9, and little Amy, 6, had lived in this cottage their entire lives. Thomas had worked as a fishing boat captain for 20 years, providing a modest but stable income. Then, 2 years ago, Elena's illness had worsened dramatically. She'd needed specialized treatment that their insurance barely covered. Medical bills piled up. Thomas took out a home equity loan to pay them, confident he could manage the payments. Then, his boat was damaged in a winter storm. The repair costs exceeded his savings. He missed 1 loan payment, then 2, then 3. The bank had shown no flexibility, no willingness to negotiate. Despite Thomas's 20-year payment history, despite Elena's medical emergency, despite his veteran status, the bank had moved for foreclosure. Thomas had tried everything. He'd gone to the bank president personally, begging for a payment plan. Denied. He'd sought help from veteran services. They had no emergency funds available. He'd even tried to sell the boat to catch up on payments, but the damaged vessel wasn't worth enough to cover the debt. The foreclosure notice had come 3 weeks ago. Eviction scheduled for April 15th. Thomas had spent every day since trying to find a miracle that never came. Now, on this Wednesday morning, Sheriff Deputy Martinez stood in the Mitchell's doorway with an eviction order while a court-appointed crew began removing furniture from the house. Sarah, Marcus, and Amy sat on the curb, crying, watching their beds and toys being stacked on the lawn. Elena sat in a wheelchair, too weak from her latest treatment to stand, tears streaming down her face. Thomas stood helplessly, his hands shaking, watching his life disintegrate. "I'm sorry, Tom," Deputy Martinez said quietly. "I don't like this any more than you do. But the bank's within their rights. The paperwork is all in order." "My kids," Thomas said, his voice breaking. "Where do I take my kids?" "You have family you can stay with?" Thomas shook his head. "My brother's in Oregon. Elena's parents are dead. We've got nowhere." Neighbors had gathered on the street, watching in sympathy but helpless to intervene. The Mitchells were well liked. Thomas always helped with neighbors' repairs. Elena had organized the street's Christmas decorations for years, but nobody had the resources to help beyond offering temporary spare rooms. That's when the mayor's car pulled up. Clint Eastwood stepped out, still wearing the casual button-down shirt he'd had on for the council meeting. He walked directly to Deputy Martinez. "What's the situation?" Clint asked. Martinez, surprised to see the mayor, straightened up. "Foreclosure eviction, Mr. Mayor. Everything's legal. Bank order executed by the court." Clint looked at the furniture on the lawn, at the 3 children crying on the curb, at Elena in her wheelchair, at Thomas standing like a man watching his world end. "Who's the homeowner?" Clint asked. "I am," Thomas said, stepping forward. "Thomas Mitchell." "Mr. Mayor, I know this looks bad, but I tried everything. The bank wouldn't work with us. My wife's medical bills." "You're a veteran," Clint said, noticing the Navy cap Thomas was wearing. "Yes, sir. Served 64 to 68, 2 tours." Clint was quiet for a moment, then turned to Martinez. "How much time do I have before they have to be out?" "Legally? They should have been out an hour ago, but I can give you maybe 30 minutes before the bank representative shows up to secure the property." "Give me the 30 minutes, Clint said. Then he turned to Thomas. "Tell me everything, fast. Why did the bank foreclose?" Thomas explained rapidly: Elena's illness, the medical bills, the home equity loan, the damaged boat, the missed payments, the bank's refusal to negotiate. "How much do you owe?" Clint asked. "Total debt is about $45,000, Thomas said. "But the missed payments that triggered the foreclosure, that's $12,000. If I could have paid that, they might have worked with me on restructuring the rest." "Might have. The bank president made it clear he wasn't interested in working with me," Thomas said bitterly. "Said I was a poor credit risk. Said the bank had already shown flexibility by giving me the loan in the first place." Clint looked at the house, a modest cottage, probably worth $200,000, maybe more given Carmel property values. The bank was foreclosing over $12,000 in missed payments on a property worth 20 times that. "What's the bank?" Clint asked. "Carmel Coast Savings," Thomas said, "on Ocean Avenue." Clint turned to Maria, who had followed him from town hall. "Get me Carmel Coast Savings on the phone. I need to speak with the president, now." "Mr. Mayor," Martinez said carefully, "I don't think the bank is going to—" "Get them on the phone," Clint repeated. Maria made the call. 5 minutes later, she handed Clint her mobile phone. "Bank President Richard Howell." Clint took the phone and walked a few steps away, but his voice carried clearly in the quiet street. Every neighbor, every child, every person present could hear every word. "Mr. Howell, this is Mayor Eastwood. I'm standing in front of the Mitchell property on Torres Street watching a family with 3 small children being evicted." "Yes, I'm aware it's a private bank matter. I'm calling because I'd like to understand your bank's foreclosure policies, particularly regarding long-term customers facing medical emergencies." "Mr. Howell, let me be very clear. You're foreclosing on a Navy veteran with a sick wife and 3 children over $12,000 in missed payments on a property worth $200,000. Does that sound like sound banking to you? I understand that banks aren't charities, but they're also not executioners. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to make sure every resident of Carmel knows that your bank showed zero flexibility, zero humanity, zero recognition of 20 years of perfect payments because of a medical emergency. You do that. You think about how your bank looks when this story gets out." Clint hung up and walked back to Thomas. "The bank's not budging, so here's what we're going to do." He pulled out his personal checkbook and started writing. "Mr. Mayor, you can't," Thomas started. $12,000 to cover the missed payments," Clint said, still writing. "This check goes to the bank today. That stops the foreclosure. Then you and I are going to work out a repayment plan that doesn't involve losing your house." Thomas stared at the check Clint held out to him. "I can't accept this. I don't know when I could pay you back." "You'll pay me back when you can," Clint said. "Interest-free. No deadline. When you're back on your feet, we'll work it out. Right now, your kids need a home and your wife needs stability. Take the check." Thomas took it with shaking hands, tears running down his face. "Why would you do this?" "Because I'm mayor of a town that should take care of its own," Clint said. "Because you served your country and you deserve better. Because your wife is sick and your kids are crying on a curb. Pick whichever reason you like." "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll get that check to the bank today and save your house." Elena, watching from her wheelchair, was sobbing. The neighbors had gathered closer, many of them crying too. Deputy Martinez was staring at Clint in disbelief. But Clint wasn't done, not even close. He turned to the crowd of neighbors who had gathered closer. "How many of you are Carmel Coast Savings customers?" About a dozen hands went up. "Here's what I'm asking you to do," Clint said. "If you believe that what this bank did to the Mitchell family is wrong, if you believe that a bank should show some flexibility for long-term customers facing medical emergencies, then you should consider taking your business elsewhere. I can't tell you where to bank. I can tell you where I won't be banking." The crowd murmured. Several people nodded. Then Clint turned to Maria. "I want a town meeting scheduled for next week. Topic: creating an emergency assistance fund for Carmel residents facing financial crisis due to medical emergencies. If the banks won't help our residents, then we will." Within an hour, Thomas had delivered the check to Carmel Coast Savings. The foreclosure was stopped. The eviction was canceled. The Mitchell family moved their furniture back inside their cottage. But the story didn't end there. By that evening, news of what Mayor Clint Eastwood had done had spread through the entire town. By the next morning, it had made regional news. By the end of the week, it was a national story. The publicity was devastating for Carmel Coast Savings. Within 10 days, over 300 customers had closed their accounts and moved to other banks. The bank president, Richard Howell, was forced to resign. The bank itself was eventually absorbed by a larger institution, and the Carmel Coast Savings name disappeared. But more importantly, Clint's proposed emergency assistance fund became reality. At the town meeting the following week, the Carmel City Council unanimously approved the creation of the Carmel Community Crisis Fund, seeded with $50,000 in city money and donations. The fund's mission was simple: provide emergency financial assistance to long-term Carmel residents facing crisis due to medical emergencies, natural disasters, or other circumstances beyond their control. No bureaucratic red tape, no credit checks, just help when people needed it most. Clint made the first donation, $50,000 of his own money. Local businesses contributed, residents contributed. Within a month, the fund had raised over $300,000. Over the next 18 months of Clint's time as mayor, the fund helped 47 Carmel families avoid foreclosure, bankruptcy, or homelessness. It paid medical bills, covered emergency repairs, provided temporary living assistance. It became a model that other small towns across California studied and replicated. The Mitchell family became the fund's success story. Thomas got his boat repaired and returned to work. Elena's condition stabilized with the stress of potential homelessness removed. The kids stayed in their schools, in their home, in their community. Thomas paid back every cent to Clint over the next 3 years, despite Clint's insistence that there was no rush. When the final payment was made, Clint refused to accept any interest. Years later, in an interview about his time as mayor, Clint was asked what he considered his greatest accomplishment in office. He didn't mention the reduced regulations or improved beach access or any of the policy changes he had implemented. "There was a family about to be evicted," he said. 3 kids sitting on a curb crying because a bank wouldn't show flexibility for a medical emergency. We stopped that eviction and created a system so it wouldn't happen to other families. That mattered more than anything else I did. Today, the Carmel Community Crisis Fund still exists, though it's been renamed the Mitchell Eastwood Community Assistance Fund. It's helped over 400 families in the decade since its creation and has assets of over $2 million. At the fund's headquarters on Ocean Avenue, there's a photo on the wall. It shows Mayor Clint Eastwood standing with the Mitchell family in front of their Torres Street cottage. Thomas has his arm around Elena. The 3 kids are smiling, and Clint is doing something rare for him in photos. He's smiling too. Below the photo is a plaque that reads, April 15th, 1987. The day a mayor chose people over procedures. The day Carmel remembered what community means. The story of Clint Eastwood canceling a town meeting to stop an eviction reminds us that leadership isn't about following protocols. It's about recognizing when protocols fail people and having the courage to do what's right anyway. He didn't have to get involved. He could have let the sheriff handle it, let the system run its course, let the Mitchell family become another statistic. Nobody would have blamed a mayor for not personally intervening in every private foreclosure. Instead, he showed up, he listened, he acted. And in doing so, he didn't just save one family, He changed how an entire community thinks about taking care of its own. If this story of leadership and community moved you, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to remember that the best leaders are the ones who show up when people need help, not just when cameras are rolling. Have you seen leadership that put people over procedures? Share your story in the comments. Ring that bell for more stories about legends who understood that power is meaningless unless you use it for good.